ಇದು ಏನು ಹೆಡ್ ಇದು?
ಇದು ಗೌರಿ ಮೀನು.
ಗೌರಿ ಇದು ಹೆಡ್. I love that sizzle of that fish as it's getting fried here. So the setup is more like a house, and so he with his wife, who incidentally comes from South Canara, they began their eatery, and since then came the trend of the Mandagadde fish restaurants. So this fish, I'm told, is called gujole. The fish seems to have a certain fattiness to it. There's a fish that's certainly very buttery in its texture. That is delicious. Yeah, akki roti, taste with some of the fish curry, the mean sambar. That curry is kadak. Namaskara folks, this is Kripal, Amanna, Gourmet on the road, and you're watching Food Lovers TV. I hope you're doing well, I hope you're staying safe and strong. So we're in a place called Mandagadde, which is roughly about 25 kilometers from Shimoga. We had a lovely 45-minute drive from Shimoga to get to this place. A drive that took us through areca nut plantations, forests on either side, and also the reservoir. And the one thing that Mandagadde is famous for is fish. And I'm told the place where it all began is Hotel Bhavani, which is where we have arrived this afternoon. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ, ನೀವು ಓನರಾ? ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹೆಸರು?
ರಮೇಶ್.
ಜನರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಶಿವಮೊಗ್ಗ ಹೋದರೆ ಮಂಡಗದ್ದೆ ಹೋಗಬೇಕು. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಷ್ಟು ಫೇಮಸ್ ಮೀನ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ?
ನ್ಯಾಚುರಲ್ ಫಿಶ್ ಎಲ್ಲ.
ಇದು ಮೀನಲ್ಲಿಂದ? ಡ್ಯಾಮ್ ಇದು ಫಿಶ್. ಸೊ ಅಂದರೆ ಕಾಟ್ಲಾ ಆ ಥರ. ಇದು ಎಷ್ಟು ವರ್ಷದಿಂದ ಇದೆ ಸರ್?
27 years.
27 years. ನಿಮ್ಮದು ಊರಲ್ಲಿ?
ಇದೆ ಮಂಡಗದ್ದೆ.
ಮಂಡಗದ್ದೆ. ಮಂಡಗದ್ದೆ ಮೀನಿಂಗ್ ಏನು ಸರ್? ಮಂಡಗದ್ದೆ ಅಂದರೆ?
ಮಾಂಡವ್ಯ ಋಷಿ ಅಂತ ಇತ್ತು, ಆಶ್ರಮ ಇತ್ತು.
ಮಾಂಡವ ಋಷಿ ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಆಶ್ರಮ ಇತ್ತು, ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಮಂಡಗದ್ದೆ. ನನಗೆ ಜನರು ಹೇಳಿದರು ಮಂಡಗದ್ದೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಫಿಶ್ದು ಟ್ರೆಡಿಷನ್ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕಡೆ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗೋದು.
ನಮ್ಮದು ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಹೋಟೆಲ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ.
ನಿಮ್ಮದು ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಹೋಟೆಲ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದು
15 ವರ್ಷ ಅಲ್ಲಿತ್ತು, ರೋಡ್ ಸೈಡಲ್ಲಿ.
ಓಕೆ. ಹಾಂ,
ಒಂದು ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡಿ 12 ವರ್ಷ.
ವೆರಿ ಗುಡ್.
ಸ್ವತಂತ್ರ ಯಾರು ಕುಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ, ನಾವೇ ಕುಕ್.
ಇದು ನೋಡ್ಬೋದಾ ಸರ್? ಯಾರು ಮಗ? ಯಾರು?
ಪ್ರಜ್ವಲ್ ಅಂತ.
ಪ್ರಜ್ವಲ್. ಹಾಯ್ ಪ್ರಜ್ವಲ್. ಇದೇನು ಕಾಟ್ಲಾವಾ? ಕಾಟ್ಲಾ ಮತ್ತು ಗೌರಿ ಮನೆ ಮಸಾಲೆ. ಫೇಮಸ್ ಏನು ಪ್ರಜ್ವಲ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ?
ತವಾ ಫ್ರೈ ಸರ್, ಫಿಶ್ ತವಾ ಫ್ರೈ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಫಿಶ್ ಕಬಾಬ್ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ.
ಓಕೆ.
ಫಿಶ್ ಹೆಡ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ.
ಫಿಶ್ ಹೆಡ್. ಹಾಂ, ಹೆಡ್ ಕರಿಯಲ್ಲಿ.
ಹಾಂ, ಕರಿ ಹೆಡ್. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅಕ್ಕಿ ರೊಟ್ಟಿ.
ಗೌರಿ ಮತ್ತು ಕಾಟ್ಲಾ ಡಿಫ್ರೆನ್ಸ್ ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ?
ಮುಳ್ಳು ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಗೌರಿಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ.
ಅದು ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಸಾಲೆ ಏನು ಮನೆದು ಮಸಾಲೆಯಾ?
ಸರ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೋಮ್ ಮೇಡ್.
ಇದು ಏನು ಹೆಡ್ ಇದು?
ಇದು ಗೌರಿ ಮೀನು.
ಗೌರಿ ಇದು ಹೆಡ್. ಮೈ ಗುಡ್ನೆಸ್, ದಟ್ಸ್ ಅ ಬಿಗ್ ಹೆಡ್. ಸೊ ಕಾಟ್ಲಾ ದೊಡ್ಡದಿರುತ್ತೆ, ಗೌರಿ ದೊಡ್ಡದಿರುತ್ತೆ.
ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಸರ್, ಒಂದು 8 kg 7 kg ಸೈಜ್.
ಅದು ಯಾವುದು?
ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ.
ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಕಾಟ್ಲಾ ಮತ್ತು ಗೌರಿ. ಇದು ಎಣ್ಣೆ ಏನು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ ಸರ್? ಮುಂಚಿನ ರಿಫೈಂಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲ ಮುಂಚೆ ಕೋಕೋನಟ್ ಆಯಿಲ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇತ್ತು?
ಕೋಕೋನಟ್ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಆ ಕಡೆ ಸೌತ್ ಕೇಂದ್ರದಲ್ಲಿ ಈಚೆಗೆ ಲೈಕ್ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ.
ಲೈಕ್ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ ಅಂದರೆ ಇದು ಮೀನು ಭಾಳ ಡೆಲಿಕೇಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ ಫ್ಲೇವರ್ನಲ್ಲಿ.
ನಮ್ಮ ಮಿಸಸ್ ಊರು ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಉಡುಪಿ.
ಓ, ನೀವು ಮಿಸಸ್ ಉಡುಪಿಯಿಂದ? ಸೌತ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ರಾ ಕನೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ.
ಅಲ್ಲಿದೆ ಮಸಾಲ.
ಹಾಂ, ಅಂದರೆ ಇದು ಮಸಾಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮದು ಬ್ಯಾಡಗಿ ಮೆಣಸಿನ್ಕಾಯಿ, ಹುಣಸೆ ಹಣ್ಣು, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಗಾರ್ಲಿಕ್ ಆ ಥರ ಹಾಕ್ತೀರಾ? ಸೊ ಆವಾಗ ನಿಮಗೆ ಹೇಗೆ ಐಡಿಯಾ ಬಂತು ಸರ್ 25 ವರ್ಷ ಹಿಂದೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಮೀನು ನಾವು ಅಂಗಡಿ ಓಪನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು?
ನಮ್ಮ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಾನ್ ವೆಜ್ ಹೋಟೆಲ್. ನಾನು ಆ ಟಚಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದೆ ಸರ್.
ಹಾಂ,
ಅದು ನಾನು ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೆ.
ಫ್ಯಾಂಟಾಸ್ಟಿಕ್. I love that sizzle of that fish as it's getting fried here. So ಗೌರಿ ಯಾವುದು ಕಾಟ್ಲಾ ಇದೆ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ?
ಬರುತ್ತೆ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಪೀಸ್.
ದೊಡ್ಡದು ಪೀಸ್. ಇದು ಕಾಟ್ಲಾ.
ಇದು ಕಾಟ್ಲಾ ಬರುತ್ತೆ.
ಅದು ಫ್ಲೇವರಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಫ್ರೆನ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಗೌರಿ ಕಾಟ್ಲಲ್ಲಿ?
ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಡಿಫ್ರೆನ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಗೌರಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಆಯಿಲ್ ಕಾಂಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ,
ಕಾಟ್ಲಲ್ಲಿ ಇರಲ್ಲ. ವಂಡರ್ಫುಲ್. Like they say, there's only one way to find out, that is by tasting both the gowri and the katla. Well, so this is a place that's fairly rustic. There's a kitchen at the back where they make the fish. The fish is what comes from the reservoir here, and it's a combination of the katla and the gowri. They do a fry and then they do a curry. I'm told this is a tradition that goes back over 25 years. When Mr. Ramesh came here, he comes from a family of non-vegetarian restaurant and bar owners, and so he decided that he wanted to do something of his own. And so he, with his wife, who incidentally comes from South Canara, came up here, and on the main road here at Mandagadde, they began their eatery. And since then came the trend of the Mandagadde fish restaurants. So today there are many of these fish restaurants all around this place, but this is the original. This is where the Mandagadde fish tradition came into existence. So the setup is more like a house, and I'm told this is Mr. Ramesh's own house. So I'm sure he lives in some part of the house, and the upstairs of the house is where the restaurant is. Space is divided into multiple cabins, and you occupy one of these. I noticed that along with the fish, people are also indulging in something a little more spirited, but that's the atmosphere, that's the vibe of this eatery here. Sir, ನನಗೆ ನೀವು 2 ಸಾವ್ ಫಿಶ್ ಫ್ರೈ
ಗೌರಿ ಒಂದು ಕೊಡ್ತೇನೆ ಮತ್ತು ಔಲ್ ಅಂತ ಸ್ಪೆಷಲ್ ಫಿಶ್
ಔಲ್
ಅವು ಡೈಲಿ ಸಿಗಲ್ಲ
ಓಕೆ
ಇದೆ ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ
ಕೊಡಿ
ಸಾಂಬಾರಲ್ಲಿ ಫಿಶ್
ಹಾಂ ಸಾಂಬಾರಲ್ಲಿ ಫಿಶ್ ಕೊಡಿ
ನಂತರ ಅಕ್ಕಿ ರೊಟ್ಟಿ ರೈಸ್
We just barged in with our camera, and I don't think Mr. Ramesh or his son Prajwal are very familiar with our work. So they were a little startled at first, but then once they got over that, they're very conversant and very helpful in their own unique way. ಇದೇನು ಗುಜೋಳೆ
ಗುಜೋಳೆ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಇದು ಸ್ಪೆಷಲ್ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಕ್ವಾಲಿಟಿ ಫಿಶ್ ಮಳೆ ಮೀನಲ್ಲಿ. ಇದು ಔಲ್ ಅಂತೇಳಿ
ಔಲ್
ಸೆಂಟ್ರ್ ಮಾತ್ರ ಮುಳ್ಳು
ಬರುತ್ತೆ
ಮುಳ್ಳು ಬರಲ್ಲ.
ಇದು ಗೌರಿ,
ಇದು
ಕಾಟ್ಲಾ.
ಇದು ಗೌರಿ.
Well, we've got the prime of the fish fries here at Bhavani Hotel. So this fish, I'm told, is called gujole. When it comes to the freshwater fish, it is priced. It happened that they had the last piece and they served it to me. And this fish is called the owl. There's only one center bone here. What's interesting is that the masala is quite moist. And then of course there's a katla, which comes from the family of carps. A fish that's easily available, easily accessible. Everywhere you go, this is what they serve you when it comes to a freshwater fish. And this is from the family of the carp, but this is called the gowri fish. And I'm told the flavor of this is supposed to be better than the katla, although it comes from the same family and also has lesser bones than the katla. I think we're going to make a beginning with that gujole. Pardon me if I'm getting these names wrong, but I'm hearing them for the first time. What's interesting here is that the fish seems to have a certain fattiness to it, even as I break into its flesh. There's a fish that's certainly very buttery in its texture. That is delicious. I can taste the tang of the hunse hannu in that masala. But what's supremely endearing is a buttery texture of that gujole. Oh, this is a delicious fish. Also, when it comes to the masala, they nape on a thick coat of the masala on the fish. I love the spicing of the masala. Very nice, yeah, the masala. Superb.
ಸುರ್ಗಿ ಫಿಶ್ ಅಂತ.
I love that. The masala that's clinging on to the skin of this gujole fish. ನಾನು ಟೇಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ ಇದರ ಮುಂಚೆ ಇದು ಗುಜೋಳೆ. ಮತ್ತು ನಿಮ್ಮದು ಮಸಾಲೆ ಸೂಪರ್ ಇದೆ. ಹುಳಿ, ಖಾರ, ಉಪ್ಪು ಪರ್ಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಇದೆ. ಇದು ಯಾರು ನಿಮ್ಮದು ರೆಸಿಪಿ, ನಿಮ್ಮದು ಮಿಸಸ್ ರೆಸಿಪಿ. ಮತ್ತು ಇದು ಫಿಶ್ ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಚರ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನಮ್ಮದು ಬಟರ್ ಥರ.
ಅದು ಮಳೆಗಾಲದಲ್ಲೇ ಸಿಗತ್ತೆ ಸಿಕ್ಕಾಪಟ್ಟೆ. ಈಗ ಶಿಕಾರಿ ಕಡಿಮೆ ರೇರ್ ಸಿಗತ್ತೆ. ಎರಡು ಒಂದು ಮೂರು ಇಂಚ್.
I'm enjoying the flavor of that masala.
ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಏನು ಫಿಶ್ ಬಂದರೂ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ನಮ್ಮ ರೆಸ್ಟೋರೆಂಟ್ಗೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ.
So Mr. Ramesh says the fish that comes, first it comes to this eatery because obviously they are the ones who began the krama of the Mandagadde meenu. Alla? Adra munche irliಲ್ಲ. Fantastic. I'm going to get flecks of that gujole with that masala. So good. I also like a bit of the tartness from perhaps the hunse hannu. I don't know if there's some lime to that goes into it, but that sourness in that masala is quite pronounced. Initially not tasting it much, but now the heat of that masala is also beginning to build up. They told me it's mostly the byadgi mensankai, but certainly has a potent spicy kick. I think next let's go for the owlu, which is a fish that I'm told has only one center bone here. Texture wise very different from the gujole. The gujole was buttery, but this one certainly is quite thick in its meatiness, and you also have to exert some pressure to break off a piece. Texture wise, it's very much like sear or a kingfish. That's the texture of this particular fish. The masala is doing a good job of holding on to it. I want to taste that bit with the skin and that masala. So some of that masala has crispened on that tawa. That is absolutely delicious. I think when it comes to that masala, they deserve a 10 on 10 rating. The way the masala interacts with that fish will vary depending on if it's a very delicate buttery fish like the gujole, or maybe something which is a little firm fleshed like this owlu. But the flavor of that masala is something else altogether. Now because this piece of fish is meaty, therefore the spice in that masala is a little less pronounced in combination with that piece of fish. Quite meaty in its bite. Next, let's come to the katla. Texture of the katla is a little softer, is a little fibrous, and there's plenty of bones that you have to be careful about. You know, when you taste the katla, you're almost tasting the flavor of damp earth. That's the sort of flavor that you're tasting in the katla. And because it's the carp, so it basically is a bottom feeder. And I guess the flavor that you taste in that fish is a reflection of that. It's almost a bit silty in its flavor. And here, that masala is a little toned down because that katla brings with it its own petrichor flavor. The flavor or the aroma of the first rains hitting the earth, that's the flavor that you're tasting in that katla. The owlu bites off rather cleanly, whereas the katla has a bit of a fibrous texture as well. Both are very unique in their own ways. The gujolu was buttery, almost tuppa-like in its texture, and therefore the masala was the most assertive when it came to that fish. I found that fish very delicate. The owlu a little more meaty, quite akin to the sear, and therefore the masala was holding on to it, but perhaps not as assertive, not as strong as I could taste in the gujole. And in the katla, basically that masala is quite complementing the wet earth sort of flavor of that fish. Let's see what that masala does in this gowri. This is a fish that is certainly a little meatier. There's also a bit of fat that you're seeing around the edges of that piece of fish. Also a hint of sweetness that you're tasting in the flesh of the fish. There's also that wet earth sort of flavor, but this fish, the flavors here seem a lot richer. I guess because of the fat in the fish and also that slight sweetness that I'm tasting somewhere. You got to be careful of these bones because these are bones that don't forgive if you ingest them by mistake. Somewhere there's a bit of the crunch of the masala where it's crispened to a dark, crunchy sort of texture. I think next we're going to ask for some rice to go with that surgi. So out here, the service is a sort that's quite functional. So you got to call and ask for what you want and you will find it. I know I'm a South Canara boy too, and I'm sure some of the purists will jump on me right away. This reminds me a bit of a khani. Idu akki roti. Idu sarenu.
Same grade.
Rajwal said try the akki roti. That akki roti is a akki roti with strength. It's not like a fulka, but it's quite kadak. Quite toasty in its flavors. Taste it with some of the fish curry, the mean sambar. That curry is kadak. The tamarind, I can taste a bit of the fenugreek No matter what fish you taste here, whether it's the gujole, whether it's the owl, whether it is the katla or perhaps the gowri, I think what is most interesting here is the masala that napes it, and also the curry that basically is made by Ramesh and his wife, aided by the son Prajwal. So good. You can eat that curry and that akki roti just by itself. We're going to try some of that surgi, whose flavor is a little like kane. Not completely, but reminds me a little in that direction. This masala is a different masala. Similar. This one seems a little more kadak. Excellent. When I walked in, I didn't know what to expect. People seemed to be in their own world, in a manner of speaking. I didn't exactly feel very welcome. I think that's natural, especially when you walk in with a camera out of the blue. But then as they warmed up to us and we to them, as they shared with us some of their traditions, and as I'm tasting some of their preparations, I must say, this is a meal that I'm quite enjoying. Some more of that owlu. Nimdo curry kuda super ide. Uppu, kara, huli perfect ide sir. Idರ flavor ನನಗೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಹದ ಕಾನೆ type flavor ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸಾಫ್ಟ್ ಇದೆ fish, ಕಾನೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ flaky ಬರುತ್ತೆ. Full enjoy ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ ನಾನು. Thank you. When you come across a meal like this, quite unexpectedly, makes you happy. You know, I was worried a bit coming into this tasting because I've already tasted a lot of food through the morning. But when you come across meals like this, you just forget the fact that you've eaten a heavy breakfast, you've indulged in a few other dishes as well. It just makes you want to dive in. Super. The slight flavor of the menthe, a bit of the sourness of the hunse handu, some strands of onion here and there that you're tasting, which goes into the ogarne. The warmth of the byadgi menchunkai. This is a coconut-based gravy, so a bit of the creaminess that comes from that. Some of that gowri with that masale. Want to taste that with the fish curry. The flavor of moist earth. When the first rains hit the earth, that's the sort of flavor that you're tasting in that gowri. Get flecks of that masala, which is quite precious, with a bit of the skin and the flesh. This is what I call a happy meal. If you love fish, and if you're open and the sort, who also likes freshwater fish, and you happen to be in this area, in Shimoga, definitely visit Bhavani Fish Hotel here in Mandagadde. To me, the masala that I tasted and the flavor of the curry reign supreme and are the sort that would happily have me revisit the next time I find myself on this picturesque road. I hope you enjoyed this Fish Uta episode of Gourmet on the Road. Until the next time, take care, stay safe, stay strong, and happy eating. Which one should I go for? Perhaps a little more of that owlu. So basically all that we've tasted, all the fish fries, the curry, the akki roti, amounts to 990 rupees. It's the sort of meal that will happily feed, I think at least on the 3 ಜನರು ಊಟ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಆರಾಮದಲ್ಲಿ. That's the sort of meal experience that I have tasted here. Well, that was a great meal, and the one thing that strikes me right now is that when it comes to sea fish, it already has a certain salty character to it, and therefore you don't need too much in terms of the punch in the masala to flavor that, to marinate that. But when it comes to freshwater fish, there's no salinity in the character of the fish, and that's the reason why perhaps the masalas both for the fry and the curry here are the sort that are supremely punchy, just to compensate for what that fish doesn't have. And I think that's the magic of the preparations that you will taste at Bhavani Hotel here in Mandagadde. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Until the next time, take care, stay safe. Bye. If you'd like to support the work that we do at Food Lovers TV, do consider joining our membership community on YouTube by hitting the join button below or on the home page. You could pledge a nominal sum and receive special privileges like behind the scenes footage, shoot updates, access to live Q&As and a lot more. You could support us on our Patreon page as well. For more info, check out the links in the description below. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, share and leave a comment below. Happy eating!